Now, now we're going to get into part B of this reading because we're going to start in Second Kings in 8 because Judah, we need to give Judah equal time because they also too fail. Okay. Now to give you some context before I start reading this in Second Kings, so that you don't get confused, there are two individuals that have the same name, Joram. Okay, Joram. There's a Joram of Judah who was the son of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and then that was the Joram of Israel, Yasharel, who was the son of King Ahab of Yasharel. And they did in a period of time did reign at the same time. Okay. Also, too, so when I'm reading, so you don't get confused, I will try to make a distinguish between what I'm talking about when I'm reading about Joram of Judah and the Joram of Yasharel. Also, too, in this section, also too, is going to be where the name of Joram of Judah, um, brother Azariah. His name is Azariah, but sometimes it's going to be read as Azahiah. That's going to be the same person. Okay. So anyway, just to make clarification again, there were two kings who was named Joram. Joram of Judah, who was the son of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and Joram of Israel, who was the son of King Ahab of Israel. And I also need to add that they were actually brother in laws, okay? Brother in laws, because one of the brothers, the Joram of Judah, married Athaliah, whom we know as Jezebel. So they were brother in law. That will give you some context on why she was wanting to kill. Um, well, we'll continue in a minute. We'll continue in a minute on that part. Let's begin. Okay, starting at Second Kings chapter 8. Second Kings chapter 8, starting at verse 1. And Elisha, who was the prophet of that was mentored by Elijah. Okay. So, and Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, rise up and go, you and your household, and sojourn there wherever you do sojourn. For Yahuwah has called for a scarcity of food, and also it is coming upon the land for 7 years. And the woman, she rose up and did according to the word of the man of Elohim. And she went with her household, and she sojourned in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. And it came to be at the end of 7 years that the woman she returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to cry out to the king for her house and for her land. Because she wanted her stuff back because she only left just for the famine. And the king was speaking to Gehazi, the servant of the man of Elohim, saying, please relate to me all the great matters that Elisha has done. And it came to be as he was relating to the king how he had restored the dead to life, that see, the woman whose son he had restored to life, she was crying out to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, my master, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son whom Elisha restored to life. So apparently, he didn't get the news. The king didn't get the news that the woman had been coming to his court, from to get her land and things back. Okay, so this is what he was telling him. So the sovereign, the king asked the woman, and she related to him the same thing. And the king appointed a certain eunuch for her, saying, return all that was hers, and all the increase of the field from the day that she left the land until now. And Elisha, he came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick. And it was reported to him, saying, the man of Elohim has come here. And the king said to Hazael, take a present in your hand and go and to meet the man of Elohim and inquire of Yahuwah by him, saying and asking, do I recover from this sickness? Because he was sick. And Hazael went to meet him and took a present with him of all the goods of Damascus, 40 cameloads full. And he came and stood before him and said, your son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to you, saying, do I recover from this sickness? Do I recover from this sickness? And Elisha said to him, go and say to him, you shall certainly recover. But Yahuwah has shown me that he shall not certainly die. And he looked steadily unto, let me repeat that. I messed up. And Elisha said to him, go, say to him, you shall certainly recover. But Yahuwah has shown me that he shall certainly die. And he looked steadily until he was ashamed. Then the man of Elohim wept. He wept. Elisha wept. And Hazael said, why is my master weeping? And he answered, he said, because I know the evil that you are going to do to the children of Yasharel, lighting their strongholds on fire, and slaying their young men with the sword, and dashing their children, and ripping open their women who are with child. And Hazael said, but what is your servant, a dog, that he should perform this great matter? He said, in other words, he was saying, why are you saying I'm gonna do something like that? And Elisha answered and said, Yahuwah has shown that you are to be king over Aram. Mm. Aram is Syria. And he left Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, what did Elisha say to you? And he answered, he said to me that you shall certainly recover. And on the next day it came to be that the king, he took a thick, came to be that it came to be that Hazael took a thick cloth and dipped it into water and spread it over the king's face so that he died. In other words, he smothered him. And Hazael reigned in his place, just like the Most High had told Elisha what was going to happen. And in the 5th year of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Yasharal, this is the Joram of king who was the son of Ahab, the king of Yasharal. And in the 5th year of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Yasharal, Jehoshaphat was king of Judah. And Joram, son of Josaphat, his son, began to reign as king of Judah. And he was 32 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem over Judah. And he walked in the way of the kings of Yasharel, as the house of Ahab had done. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife. See? And he did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, even though he was the king of Judah. However, Yahuwah would not destroy Judah for the sake of David, his servant, as he promised him to give a lamp to him and his sons forever. And in his days, Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah and made a king over themselves. And Joram passed over to Tirzah and all his chariots with him. And he rose by night and smote the Edomites who had surrounded him and the commanders of the chariots. But his people fled to their tents. Yet Edom has been in revolt from under the hand of Judah to this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. And the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Joram slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Azariah, his son, reigned in his place. Remember, I was telling the beginning about Azariah. He became king of Judah. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, the king of Israel, king of Yasharel, Azariah, the son of Joram, the king of Judah, began to reign. See, all these Joram and Ram, got to keep them separate. I'm going to say it again. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, who was the king of Yasharel, then Azariah, son of Joram, king of Judah, began to reign. And Azariah, he was 22 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Athaliah, whom we know now as Jezebel, the granddaughter of Omri, the king of Yasharel. And he walked, who walked? Who was Azariah? Azariah. And Azariah walked in the way of the house of Ahab. And he did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, as the house of Ahab had done. For he was the son in law of the house of Ahab. And let me start at 20, 20, 25. Let me go back to 25. In the 12th year of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Yasharel, Azariah, son of Joram, king of Judah, began to reign. And Azariah was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Athaliah, which the granddaughter of Omri, king of Yasharel. In other words, that was Jezebel. And he walked, who walked? Azariah, the 22-year-old. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab. And he did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, as the house of Ahab had done. For he was the son in law of the house of Ahab. And he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to battle against Hazael, the king of the Syrians. This is the king who became king because he killed his mother, the king of Syria. So so Azariah, the 22-year-old who began to reign in Jerusalem now, in Judah, he 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 went to war with Joram, the son of Ahab, the king of Yasharel, and they went up against Hazael, the king of Syria. And the Syrians, they struck Joram. And King Joram, he went back to Jezreel to recover from the wounds with which the Syrians had struck him at Ramah when he fought against Hazael, king of Syria. Then Azariah, son of Joram, the king of Judah, he went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, for he was sick. And chapter 9. And Elisha, the prophet, called one of the sons of the prophet and said to him, gird your loins and take this flask of oil in your hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. And you shall go there and look there for Yahu, son or Jehu in some of the translation, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and make him rise up from among his brothers and take him to an inner room and take the flask of oil and pour it on his head and say, thus said Yahuwah, I have anointed you king over Yasharel. Then you shall open the door and run and flee and do not wait. So the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead and came in, and he saw the commanders of the army sitting. And he said, I have a message for you, O commander. And Jehu said, for which one of us? And he said, for you, commander. And he rose up and went into the house. And he poured the oil on his head and said to him, just like the Most High told him to say, thus said Yahuwah, Elohim of Yasharel, I have anointed you king over the people of Yahuwah, over Yasharel. And you shall smite the house of Ahab, your master. And I shall avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of Yahuwah at the hand of Jezebel, which was in a previous story. Okay. And all the house of Ahab shall perish. And I shall cut off from Ahab all the males in Yasharel, both those shut up and those left at large. And I shall give up the house of Ahab like the house of Jerome, son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, son of Ahiah. And the dogs are going to eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, with none to bury her. Then he opened the door and fled. And Jehu came out to the servants of his master, and one said to him, Is there peace? Why did this madman come to you? And he said to them, You know the man and his talk? He said, You don't know. It wasn't a question. He said, You know the man and his talk. And they said, A lie, reveal it to us now. Because he didn't want to tell them that he was going to be made king. So he said, Thus and thus he spoke to me, saying, Thus said Yahuwah, I have anointed you king over Yasharel. And they hurried, and each one took his garment and put it under him on the top of the steps. And they blew a ram's horn, saying, Jehu reigns. Thus Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram had been guarding Ramoth Gilead, he and all of Yasharel, against Hazael, king of Syria. But King Joram had returned to Jezreel to recover from his wounds, which the Syrians had smitten him with when he fought with Hazael, the king of Syria. Jehu now said, If this is your desire, let no one leave or escape from the city to go and make it known in Israel. And Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram was laid up there, and Hazael, king of Judah, had come down to see Joram. And a watchman stood on the tower of Jezreel, and he saw the company of Jehu. And he came and said, I see a company of men. And Joram said, Get a horseman and send him to meet them, and let him say, Is there peace? And the horseman went to meet him and said, Thus said the king, Is there peace? And Jehu said, What have you to do with peace? Turn around and follow me. And the watchman spoke, saying, The messenger went to them, but is not coming back. Then he sent out a second horseman who came to them and said, Thus said the king, Is there peace? And Jehu answered, What have you to do with peace? Turn around and follow me. And the watchman spoke, saying, He went up to them and is not coming back. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu, son of Nimshi, for he drives madly. Then Joram said, Hitch up. And his chariot was hitched up. And Joram, king of Yasharel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot. And they went out to meet Jehu, and met him on the portion of Nebat, the Israelite, not Israelite, Jezreelite. And it came to be when Joram saw Jehu that he said, Is there peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace? As long as the whorings of your mother Jezebel and her witchcraft are so many? Thereupon Joram turned his hands around and fled, and said to Ahaziah, Treachery, O Ahaziah. And Jehu drew his bow and shot Joram between his arms, and the arrow came out at his heart, and he sank down in his chariot, and said to Bigdar, his officer, Take him up and throw him into the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember how you and I were riding together behind Ahab his father, and you who lifted up this pronouncement against him? Have I not seen the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons last night? Declares Yahuwah. And I shall repay you in this portion, declares Yahuwah. And now take up throw him on the portion according to the word of Yahuwah. And 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 Ahaziah, king of Judah, saw this, and he ran up the way to Beth Agan. And Jehu pursued him and said, "Smite him too in the chariot at the ascent to Gur, which is by Yibalam." And he fled to Megiddo and died there. Then his servants conveyed him in the chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his tomb with his fathers in the city of David. So he was wicked. He was wicked. He was wicked. And in the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab, Ahaziah began to reign over Judah. And Jehu came to Jezreel, and Jezebel heard of it. And she put paint on her eyes, and adorned her head, and looked through a window. And as Jehu came to the gate, she said, "Is it peace, Zimri, slayer of your master?" And he lifted up his face to the window and said, "Who is with me? Who?" And the three eunuchs looked down to him, and he said, "Throw her down." And they threw her down, and some of her blood splattered on the wall and on the horses, and he trampled her underfoot. And he went in, and he ate and drank, and said, "Go now, see to this cursed one, and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." So they went to bury her, but all that they found of her was the skull and the feet and the palms of the hands. And they came back and informed him, and he said, "This is the word of Yahuwah, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, in the portion of Jezreel, dogs are going to eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the cost of Jezebel shall be as dung on the surface of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they do not say, 'This is Jezebel.'" Now let's go on to 10, because we have to see how the rest of the prophecy was fulfilled. And Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. And Jehu wrote letters and sent to Samaria the rulers of Jezreel, to the elders, and to the guardians of Ahab, saying, "And now, when this letter comes to you, since your master's sons are with you, and you have chariots and horses and a walled city and weapons, choose the best and most upright of your master's sons, and appoint him on his father's house, and fight for your master's house." And they were greatly afraid and said, "Look, two kings have not stood before him. How do we stand? How do we stand? We, because of what had happened, because Jehu had slaughtered and killed both of the Jorams, the king of Israel and the kings of Judah. So they was afraid. And then he said in 5, "And he who was over the house, and he who was over the city, the elders also, and the guardians, they sent to Jehu and said, 'We are your servants, and all that you tell us to do, we're going to do it. We do not appoint anyone to reign. Do what is good in your eyes.'" They were scared, y'all. And he wrote a second letter to them, Jehu did, saying, "If you are for me, and if you obey my voice, then take the heads of the men, your master's sons, and come to me at Jezreel by this time tomorrow." Now the king's sons were 70 beings, were with the great of the city, were with the great men of the city who brought them up. Because these are the sons. Remember the Most High said that none of their house, none of the sons is gonna live. You remember that prophecy? We read it. And it came to be, when the letter came to them, they took the king's sons and slew them, 70 men, and put their heads in a basket and sent them to him at Jezreel. Then a messenger came and informed him, saying, "They have brought the heads of the king's sons." And he said, "Make them 2 heaps at the entrance of the gate until morning." And it came to be in the morning that he went out and stood and said to all the people, "You are righteous. Look, I conspired against my master and slew him. But who smote all of these?" He said he conspired against, because he smothered that man, you remember? He said, but who smote all of these, all the king's sons? They said, know now that not one word of Yahuwah, which Yahuwah spoke concerning the house of Ahab, fails to the ground. For Yahuwah has done, for Yahuwah has done what he spoke by his servant Elijah. And Jehu smote all those left of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men, and his friends, and his priests, until he left him without a survivor, just like it was prophesied. And he rose up to go and went to Samaria, on the way at Bethgad of the shepherds. And Jehu met the brothers of Ahaziah, the king of Judah, and said, who are you? And they answered, we are brothers of Ahaziah, and we have come down to greet the sons of the king and the sons of the queen's mother. And he said, take them alive. So they took them alive and slew them too at the well of the Beth-equed. It was 42 men, and he left none of them. And he left there and met Jehonadab, son of Rechab, coming to meet him, and Barak him, and said to him, is your heart right as my heart is towards your heart? And Jonadab answered, it is. If it is, give me your hand. And he gave him his hand, and he took him up to him into the chariot. And he said, come with me and see my Adur for Yahuwah. See my Adur for Yahuwah. And they made him ride in his chariot. And he came to Samaria and smote all those left of Ahab in Samaria till he had destroyed them, according to the word of Yahuwah, which he spoke to Elijah. And Jehu gathered all the people and said to him, Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu serves him much. Jehu gathered all the people and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little bit, but Jehu serves him much. And now call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all the priests. Let no one be missing, for I have a great slaughtering to make to Baal. Anyone who is lacking shall not live. But Jehu who did this deceptively in order to destroy the servants of Baal. Oh, okay. And Jehu said, proclaim an assembly for Baal. So they proclaimed it. And Jehu sent throughout all of Yasharel, and all the servants of Baal came, so that there was not a man left who did not come. And they came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was filled from end to end. And he said to him who was over the robe, bring out the garments for all the servants of Baal. And he brought out the garments for them. And Jehu and Jonadab, son of Rechab, they went into the house of Baal and said to the servants of Baal, search and see that no servants of Yahuwah are here with you, but only the servants of Baal. So they went in to make offerings and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had appointed for himself 80 men on the outside, and had said, the man who lets escape of the men whom I have brought into your hands, his life is for his life. So life for life, but not let anybody go, what he was saying. And it came to be, when he had finished making the burnt offering, Jehu said to the guard and to the officers, go in, smite them, let no one come out. And they smote them with the edge of the sword. And the guards and the officers threw them out and went into the inner room of the house of Baal and brought out the pillars of the house of Baal and burned them and broke down the statue of Baal and broke down the house of Baal and made it a latrine to this day. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Yasharel. However, Jehu did not turn away from the sins of Joram, son of Nebat, who had made Yasharel sin from the golden calves that were at Bethel and Dan. And Yahuwah said to Jehu, because you have done well by doing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all that was in my heart, your sons are going to sit on the throne of Yasharel to the fourth generation. But Jehu didn't do it. They never do, y'all. They never do. But Jehu did not guard to walk in the Torah of Yahuwah Elohim with Yasharel without his heart. For he did not turn away from the sins of Joram, who had made Yasharel sin. And in those days, Yahuwah began to cut off some in Yasharel. And Hazael smote them throughout all the border of Yasharel, from the Jordan to the sunrise, all the land of Gilead, the Gadites and the Reubenites and the Menashites and the area which is by the Wadi Anam, including Gilead and Bashan. And the rest of the acts of Jehu and all that he did and all his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Yasharel? So Jehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Jehu and, and Jehu and Joel, his son, reigned in his place. And the days that Jehu reigned over Yasharel and Samaria were 28 years. Now, the story goes back in 11 before Jezebel was killed, in chapter 11. Okay, I'm just going to say Azariah. It's easy to say that. And Athaliah was the mother of Azariah. And when she saw that her son was dead, oh, y'all, she arose and destroyed all the offspring of the kingdom. But Yehosheba, the daughter of the king of Joram, the sister of Azariah, took Joaz, son of Azariah, and stole him away from among the sons of Joel, which is really, in the other version, his name is Joash. It was Joash. So I'm going to read that part again. 2. But Yehosheba, the daughter of the king of Joram, the sister of Azariah, she took Joash, son of Azariah, and stole him away from among the sons of the king's sons, who were put to death, because all the king's sons was put to death, remember? So they hid him and his nurse in the bedroom from Azariah. Okay, let me go back. I misread. Go back to 11:1. Okay, let's read that again in chapter 11. And Athaliah, who was Jezebel, was the mother of Azariah. And when she saw that her son was dead, which was King Jerome of Yasharel, she arose and destroyed all the offsprings of the kingdom. But Yehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, the sister of Azariah, took Joaz, son of Azariah, and stole him away from among the sons of the king's sons, who were put to death. So they hid him and his nurse. So they hid him and his nurse in the bedroom from Jezebel. I'm just going to call her Jezebel. And he was not put to death. And he remained with her in hiding in the house of Yahuwah for 6 years, while Athaliah, which is Jezebel, was reigning over the land. So she was the only woman that actually reigned over Judah. She reigned over Judah. And in the 7th year, Jehoiah sent and brought the commanders of hundreds with the Karites and the runners, and brought them into the house of Yahuwah to him. And he made a covenant with them, and took an oath from them in the house of Yahuwah, and showed them the son of the king. And he commanded them, saying, this is what you are to do. 1/3 of you who come in on the Shabbat are to be on guard in the king's house, and 1/3 at the gate of Sur, and 1/3 at the gate behind the runners. And you shall be on guard in the house, lest it be broken down. And the 2 detachments of you who are going out on the Shabbat shall be on guard in the house of Yahuwah for the king, King Joash. He was young. He went but 6, 7 years old. And you shall surround the king on all sides, every man with his weapons in his hand. And whoever comes within the ranks, let him be put to death. And be with the king as he goes out and as he comes in. So the commanders of the hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada, the priest, commanded. And each of them took his men who were going in on the Shabbat, with those who were going out on the Shabbat. And they came to Jehoiah the priest. And the priest gave the commanders of hundreds the spears and the shields which had belonged to King David that were in the house of Yahuwah. And the runners stood, every man with his weapons in his hand, all around the king, from the right side of the house to the left side of the house, by the altar and the house. They were guarding him. They were guarding that baby. And he brought out the son of the king and put on him the diadem and the witness, and they appointed him to reign and anointed him, and they clapped their hands and said, "Let the king live." And Athaliah, which is Jezebel, she heard the noise of the runners, the people, and she came to the people to the house of Yahuwah, and she looked, and she saw the king standing by a column, according to the ruling, and the chiefs and the trumpeters were beside the king. He was a whole, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing the trumpets. And Jezebel tore her garments and cried out, "Treason, treason!" And Jehoiah the priest commanded the commanders of the hundreds, the officers of the army, and said to them, take her outside the ranks, and slay with the sword whoever follows her. For the priest had said, "Do not let her be killed in the house of Yahuwah." So they took hold of her, and she went by the way of the horse's entrance to the king's house and was put to death there. And we already read how she died. And Jehoiah made a covenant between Yahuwah and the king and the people to be the people of Yahuwah, also between the king and the people. And all the people of the land went to the house of Baal, and they broke it down. They completely broke its altars and its images, and slew Matan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priests appointed inspectors over the house of Yahuwah, and took the commandments of hundreds, and the Cherets, and the runners, and all the people of the land. And they brought the king down from the house of Yahuwah, and went by way of the gate of the runners to the king's house. And he sat on the throne of the kings. And all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city had rest, for they had slain Jezebel with the sword in the king's house. And Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. Now we're going to stop there, because we do know that Joash, he did what was right in the next chapter in 12, which we will not read. He did what was right in the eyes of Yahuwah. He did what was right. He was a good king of Judah. So we could see that throughout all this, even in Second Kings and what have you, Judah also did their dirt as well, from the king Joram, who was a king of Judah, and there was others as well, because it's been said that only 8 kings out of the king of Judah was righteous out of 20, and out of the Yasharel, it was 21 kings, and every one of them was wicked and was in idolatry. So we're going to stop there right here, and then in the next reading, we're going to go on, because we're trying to get to who are the Gentiles that Paul was sent to. That's the whole purpose of this. Until then, shalom.